Alright, now let's record something about us, a practical section within the core written exam of CCIE Enterprise. 350401 knowledge point for the first question. First of all, let's look at the question. So the question involves 3 routers. Each of our routers is in its own area, so R1 is in area 1, R3 is in area 2, R2 is in area 0. So there are 4 requirements for the question. Let's first look at its first requirement. He said we need to enable OSPF on all our interfaces. Activation requires the use of network command lines. Run OSPF, and when we activate, you need to match the mask of our interface. In other words, whether it's a positive mask or a negative mask. So you cannot use our precise activation method to activate the interface. Activation must be done through masking. Then he said, so you must use this network command. Activate centralized declaration activation. You cannot activate below using this interface we have here. Cannot use any IP OSPF area 0, not allowed. The network command line must be used within the process. Then we need to establish neighbors between all our routers. This is the second requirement. For the third requirement, it is stated that our OSPF process ID must be 1. And you must use the Loopback 0 interface as its OSPF router ID. The fourth requirement is that you provide all your physical ports, except for our Loopback, right? Between physical ports, we must enable authentication for our OSPF. And the key ID, the ID number must be 1. Then the password has to be our CCNP321 password. So this question mainly focuses on operation and authentication of OSPF, so the difficulty is not too great. However, there may be slightly more commands in the command line compared to our other questions. For other questions, it's about 2 or 3 sentences. Regarding this question, your command line may be a little more. Let's log into the environment the same as before, 3 devices. R1, R2, R3. Let's configure the 3 routers. First of all, do it this way. After we come up, let's first check the interface addresses. Check with show IP interface brief. So R1 has a 00 interface, 10.0.0.1. Another loopback 0. Similarly, on the R2 side, we also have all our pre-configurations in place. So there's 001 and loopback 0 R3 also has them. Show IP interface brief. So after coming up, certainly, we need to create the OSPF process first. So on this side of R1 router OSPF1, the process number must be 1. Then you must use the Loopback 0 interface as the router ID. Let's manually specify it. 1.1.1.1. When activating the interface, must use the network command line. Must be activated using the mask method, regardless of these reactions, right? So for example, let's say need to enable OSPF on interface 00. You need to pay attention to the issue of regions. You see squares here? Actually, it's part of our area 0, so the dashed line part is the part of our area 1. So pay attention to our R1's 00. Actually still inside area 0, then activate your network on our 00 interface. Is it 10.00, right? So it is 10.0.0.0 dash 24 10.0.0.0.0.0.25. 5. Activate this interface to run in our OSPF area 0 done. So loopback 0 interface. Also need to put it into our area 0. Pay attention to the mask of loopback 0. It defaults to -32. When you activate it, network 1.1.1.1 0.0.0.0. Put it into our area 1, those 2 regions. This is for R1, so we will do the authentication later, right? Deal with the neighbors first before proceeding. Here on R2, configure router. OSPF1. We need to select the address of our own loopback 0 interface as the router ID as router ID, then activate our 10.0.0.0.0 to .0.0.25. 5. Our 00 port, put it in our area, Zoho network, our 192.168.a 0.0.0.0.25. 5. put it in our area 0, and then there is loopback 0, put network 2.2.2.2.0.0.0.0.0 into area 0. This is the configuration of R2, the same on this side for R3. We first create the OSPF process. Router ID should be selected using the address of our loopback 0 interface. Then activate its 00192.168.0.0.0.255. Put it in area 0. Our loopback 0 interface belongs to our area 2. Network 3.3.3.3.0.0.0.0 is in area 2 in region 2. Don't look at it wrong, I almost mistook it. And then we move on. Check our neighbor relationship, right? So under normal circumstances, currently there is no situation where certification is being pursued. Neighbor relationships should all be established, so there is still no connection between R2 and R3 because we are still in Xstart. Almost there, so there's probably about 5 seconds left. We'll be able to wake up the neighbors soon. So when they become neighbors, let's configure OSPF authentication. It requires MD5 authentication. So if it's about OSPF MD5 authentication, it also said within the interface, authentication must be enabled under the interface. So in fact, this question, whether it's about regional authentication. Interface authentication can actually be done in various ways. However, it says here that it's for each physical interface. Let's proceed to run our OSPF authentication. So in simple terms, let's stabilize for a moment. Let's continue to use our interface authentication method. So do it this way. So if you configure interface authentication, OSPF authentication methods, first, configure our key under the interface, then enable OSPF authentication under the interface. So the interface on the physical port of R1, they do not count loopback. Port 00 OSPF message digest key, MD5 key 1. If required, this is the MD5 key. It is named CCNP3, 2.1 input. At lowercase is all lowercase, so CCNP3 2.1. Then enable authentication for IP OSPF authentication. What should I choose? Message digest directly switch on our MD5 authentication. We have just set up the key. The ID is 1, then CCNP3 2.1. Enter. So let's start our authentication. After R1 enables authentication, immediately establish the OSPF neighbor relationship between our R1 and R2. It should go down soon because R1 has authentication enabled. However, R2 does not have authentication enabled. The neighborly relationship will soon encounter problems. Wait for the next delivery of their OSPF hello packets to us. So in order to see this phenomenon, let's not rush to enable the OSPF authentication on R2 for now. Let's keep the suspense first, shall we? Let's observe for a while the phenomenon of the neighbor's relationship deteriorating later. Let's configure R3 first. Port 01 on R3 here, AP OSPF message digest key, 1 MD5. Our key is CCNP321. Then OSPF authentication. Message digest enable our OSPF authentication. Done. Once you see R1 and R2, they will go down because R1 has authentication enabled. R2 is not on, so the neighbor can't get up. So in the end, we also do this on the R2 side. Here on R2, because there are two physical interfaces that are the same, we will configure both ports in the range together. Interface from 00 to 1 OSPF message digest key, 1 MD5 CCNP3, 2.1 OSPF authentication. Message digest, we initiate authentication done. Then their neighbors should be established soon. Take a look, R1 has a neighbor relationship with R2. Then wait for the neighbors of R2 and R3. So in the end, we should be on R2. Go to show IP OSPF neighbor. Both neighbors need to be in a good relationship. That's normal. Everything needs to be, in order to be normal, show IP OSPF neighbor. In conclusion, between R1, R2 and R3, look, its router ID is normal and all neighbor relationships are full. So this question is done again. Okay, family, after doing that, remember the requirements for this question are very simple. It said, save your configuration to NVRAM before moving to the next item. So you must finish it. Save this configuration. If not saved, there may be unexpected issues. Remember to save it after saving it properly. Press it again. So the next question is about the button. Move on to the next question. So be sure to save the configuration. How are you, classmates? Then you can submit the paper after finishing. Submit the exam and you're done. It's the next question. Carry on with what comes next. So if you want to learn more about such a CCIE certification track, such an information, welcome to continue learning. Please continue to contact us. So we are Wolf Lab Network Technology Laboratory. Looking forward to meeting you again next time. So let's end this question here. See you in our next question. Goodbye.